What is going on, garden fans? Welcome back to the Permaculture Homestead. In today's episode, I'm taking you out to the project site for one of our live tours. So come on back and enjoy the journey. Okay, some quick info about the tour. First off, this is a beginner tour. This is not for the intermediate or advanced permaculture designer. Some of these people that go on these tours have never even heard the word permaculture before. So this is a way for me to get our local community excited about some new gardening techniques. Secondly, I want to give thanks to Blaze, a friend of mine who came out and actually filmed this and cut and paste this video together for y'all today. I told y'all I'm going to be collaborating with some people this year to kind of improve the content. Expect more changes to come. Lastly, I want to thank all of you, my subscribers who came out to support. We really appreciate you. That's what really helps us out and helps keep the farm going. So, come on out, keep coming out, and enjoy the video right now. Some of you I don't. My name is Tori. I designed this food forest here behind you. And just some quick history on this plot in general. This is a third generation owned feed and seed store. I met Sammy buying chicken feed from here about 6 years ago. She expressed an interest in wanting to do a garden. And I told her, hey, I'll design it for you. I do permaculture design. I'll do it for free. And if you like it, we'll implement the design. So we implemented this demonstration site here on about 1/3 of an acre on a hillside. Back in the summer of fall in 2016 was when we kind of broke ground on the project, and we took about 8 months just to kind of learn the lay of the land. We looked at topographical maps, we checked sun charts, and we just watched how things worked over here through about 8 months. During those 8 months, we dug our earthworks, these swales or trenches dug on contour. We got this education center built. We got all the water catchment set up. Basically, we did all the groundwork up front first before we ever put a plant in the ground. In the spring of 2017 was when we started planting out here. So this place is really only 5 years old. It's still kind of a baby as far as orchards go. I designed this using permaculture techniques. Now, permaculture is a design science. It was developed by David Holmgren, a graduate student, and his teacher Bill Mollison back in 1978. Permaculture is an approach to land management, and it's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. You got to change the way you think about gardening to kind of understand some of this. It utilizes design principles derived from whole systems thinking. How do we develop sustainable food systems that regenerate the earth and build community resilience? How do we put together a whole ecosystem that welcomes in the good bugs, the birds, all the vegetation that grows with it, and all the companions that we can grow things together? As a design science, permaculture draws to it existing agricultural design principles. Things like keyline design, that is digging these swales, working with the earth to kind of have water work through your system. Water harvesting, which you kind of see here. Animal grazing, that's like chicken tractors, rabbit tractors, things like that. Vermicomposting, natural building, this is cob building, clay building, agroforestry, sheep mulching, cover cropping, aquaculture, gill building, layering. So all like the best of all these garden principles kind of got pulled into this umbrella called permaculture, and it's a course that you can take in Australia. It's a 500-page manual. They don't offer that course here in America. I don't know why, but it's a pretty science-heavy book that you can buy. It's called Permaculture, a Design Manual, and I myself sat and read through it because I'm a science dork. I don't mind reading through 500 pages of thick science manuals. What permaculture is not. This is not monoculture. So this is not a peach orchard. This isn't a corn plot, a soy farm. This isn't a strawberry plot. Those things are high intensive gardening. They take a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers. We don't use any of that stuff out here. No pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, fertilizers. We try to, once again, welcome in the good bugs to take care of the bad bugs. In permaculture systems, we try to close loops. We want to take our waste stream and recycle it back into this our garden here. So you're going to see a lot of wood chips. We use wood chips, not just our own wood chips, but we're sequestering carbon from the city itself. So the city of Gaston is bringing their wood chips in, and we're sequestering their carbon here on our site. So we're not only carbon neutral, we're carbon negative. We're taking other people's carbon and turning it into soil out here. Some things we're growing. Now I got you a handout here just to show you some of the things we're growing. We're growing a lot of uncommon fruits. We're growing loquat, which is definitely native to this area. The largest loquat in this state is grown over at the Clemson Agriculture Extension, and it's about 90 feet tall. It puts on a small round fruit. About this time of year, our loquat is starting to set fruit. By next month, we'll be picking it. It's kind of about the size of an apricot, has about the consistency of an apricot, but maybe a little more lemony flavor to it. We're growing gummy berry, Elaeagnus multiflorea, and you're going to hear me talk about this one a few times. Gummy berry is our nitrogen-fixing, edible berry-producing crop. So gummy berry is our nitrogen for this site here. That is our fertilizer plant, basically. And just like clover and vetch, this shrub is going to put nitrogen in the roots, and when we prune that tree down, those root systems die back, and that nitrogen becomes bioavailable to the trees growing right next to it. Other plants we're growing that I'm just going to touch on really quick, a lot of understory plants or shrub species and ground covers. We have blackberries, blueberries, figs. We have olive trees, cherry trees, pecans, almond, Chinese chestnut, raspberries, pine berries, which are basically strawberries, plums, hazelburts, which is a hazelnut crossed with a filbert. We have pomegranate, which grow great in Mediterranean environment, which is basically what we got here in South Carolina. We have persimmon, pear, and then a bunch of ground covers, things like vetch, lemon balm, garlic, onion, goldenrod, and all the annual vegetables to grow with it. I was talking about closing loops. We do a lot of cover cropping out here. So we grow nitrogen fixing cover crops, things like clover and vetch. And what we do twice a year is we will chop and drop those. We'll basically kind of cut those plants down. We'll drop them, and then we wood chip over that green material. And in essence, what we're doing is kind of composting on site. We have our green material, we have brown material layered on it, and as it rains and those things start to break down, we're basically building topsoil as we go along. So this is how we're building topsoil, along with putting nitrogen back into the soil. This was all free or donated or came from some other waste stream. You know, here again, we're trying to close loops on the system here. So we'll take anything that's free. A lot of the tubing you see was stuff that was laying around here at the site. We're just kind of recycling that, upcycling it back into the system. These tanks are 300 gallons a piece times 6. So that's 1,800 gallons of water storage times 2. 3,600 gallons of water stored here. Now we put our water storage here at the top of the hill because we want to use gravity to feed it back down the hill. So this is no electricity needed here whatsoever. We're using basically gravity as our source to sink down the hill. All pretty easy stuff to maintain once it gets set up. Have any of y'all seen a topographical map? One of those top-down maps that kind of has the lines on it, shows you contour? That's basically what we did here with our trenches, these swales on contour. We looked at a topographical map. We came out here with a dumpy level and we found those contour lines and then dug these on those lines. This is so that as water comes down the hill, it's going to get stopped up by this trench. This trench will fill up and it'll slowly seep downhill behind me. If there's an overspill, we've got a common spillway right over here to my right, which you'll see as we get walking around. So if these things fill up too much, they'll spill over, go through this common spillway, and then that water will kind of meander into our vegetable garden at the bottom of the hill. So no thing goes to waste. This is not new technology. Think rice paddies, right? That's basically what we did here. We kind of terraced this hillside like rice paddies in order to slow, spread, and sink water into the landscape. Obviously, this is South Carolina. You know we got droughty conditions. It gets dry out here really quick. Watering like this, we've found that the soil stays wetter longer. Once again, we'll fill up these swales with our water catchment. If, for some reason, we run out of water, we actually have a 2-acre pond here right next door. It's a piece of property that Sammy's about to buy. We'll use solar pump some water into these swales, and they'll fill up with pond water. Another great way to get a little fertigation. You know, that's nitrogen, oxygen-rich water over there that we're feeding into this site. So it's another way we kind of feed these plants with pond water. I was talking about chop and drop. This whole upper swale has recently been mowed and then wood chipped over, and it takes a while. I mean, once we start digging, it's going to take a while to get down to topsoil because we've been doing this chop and drop for 6 years now. And when you finally get to topsoil, it's nice, it's rich, it's black, it's not too much clay in it. You know, so this is how we're building topsoil over time. This constant lasagna layering, chop and drop, and wood chip over. This is how we're building soil. We've got mixed plantings here. So right here is a plum tree. The next plum tree you're going to find is about 20 or 30 feet away. And then we got 2 more plum trees way down the hill. Doing this kind of disguises our plants to pests. In a monoculture, it's easy for a pest to find a peach tree and then just work its way down the line. I'm just gonna mow down all these peach trees. In this system, if a pest finds this plum tree, it's gonna have to travel a long distance to find the next plum tree. So it's kind of disguised. It's part of the pest control that's built in. Last year we had plum cuculio eat a few fruit on this tree, but it never got to the other plum trees. It never was able to get to the other trees and find them. So here again, we got a little bit built-in redundancy with all this extra planting and all these things that are grouped together. Pomegranate right here next to me, you know we got a late frost. It's kind of cooked up the leaves some. These are hardy, they'll come back, it's still early in the season. Right here is a Chinese chestnut, big giant nut tree. Eventually it'll be probably about 90 feet tall. Might look like this oak tree behind us. And then what will happen is around that tree, you're gonna have all these fruit trees that are about 20 to 30 feet tall. You'll have a plum, you'll have a mulberry, you'll have an olive tree, a jujube, all kind of around as a guild this nut tree. I was talking about goomyberry. I love goomyberry. This is our nitrogen fixing plant. You see I kind of prune it down to about 6 feet tall. I don't let it get much taller than 6 feet. And as I chop it down, the root systems die back and that nitrogen becomes bioavailable to the plant right next to it. Also, it's a shrub. If you can see this bird nest in here, we got a lot of birds' nests throughout all the shrubs out here. This is my more pest control. If I have an inviting environment for the good birds to come in and eat pests, I don't have to spray for bugs. So nitrogen fixing, edible berry, it kind of tastes like a raspberry. It's also a home to some of my pest control. Can't go wrong with a plant like this. Most of our nut trees are here on our bigger swales and swale patties. So we have some hazelnuts right here. We have more hazelnuts over here. As we go down the hill, there are less nut trees. Most of our nut trees are here at the top of the hill. They get more sunlight, they get better sun exposure and better water exposure. Here is one of those jujube I was talking about, starting to break dormancy. You can see a little green leaf on it right now. This is just kind of the beginning of spring. Things are starting to wake up. And once again, because things are mixed here, here's a jujube, I got some nuts behind me. The next jujube tree is way down the hill. Never really gets any pest pressure anyway. These are, here again, pretty hardy plants, can tolerate any soil condition, and are generally pest and disease tolerant. As we come down the hill, I'll just kind of give you a look at two swales. So like I was saying about this was one we recently mowed and wood chipped, okay? We hadn't done that here, just one patty down. So this is kind of what this looked like just a couple weeks ago. It's talking about maintenance for a system like this. Twice a year, once during the spring, around this time, and then once during the fall, what we will do is come out here and mow. We mow the ground covers, the weeds, the clover that we've planted, and then we wood chip right over it. So as I was saying about us being carbon zero, we're carbon neutral or negative because we're taking the city's wood chip and putting them out here, closing up waste streams. But ultimately, all this green material here is soil. We're gonna mow it, chop it, drop it, wood chip over it so it looks like this, and then we'll leave it until the fall. In the fall, we'll mow and wood chip again. And that is about the only maintenance we do out here. I come out here every Saturday just to look at things, maybe prune some things, pick some fruit, but ultimately, there's not a whole lot of maintenance for a system like that. What I like about jujube, the flower on it is really, really tiny. We're talking like 2 or 3 centimeters across. So it's not a big flower that kind of welcomes in funguses, viruses, and bacteria into it. So we've never had to spray these for anything. They flower a little later in the season, so they kind of miss some of the pest cycles that may affect other plants like peaches, pears, and plums. So they flower later, they fruit later, and this is what we found is they kind of miss some of the pest cycles that we get here normally in South Carolina. Good question. Yeah, all this green material here, the dollarweed, the clover, the vetch, this all gets mowed and then chopped and dropped over it. Pineapple guava, here is, got 2 pineapple guava shrubs right here. This is a great one for edible landscaping. Let's say you got some useless boxwoods sitting in your front yard. Okay, pull those out, put those pineapple guava in. It's evergreen, it won't drop its leaves, it has an edible flower, and it's gonna put on a fruit. So you can edible landscape your yard, and there's small things you can do to increase your food production even in the suburbs. Pineapple guava is one of my favorite ones to put on any client site where they have those useless old boxwoods. We take them out, we put in pineapple guava, and boom, now you're providing yourself with a little more food. We took soil samples from different sites, and we found that at the top of the hill was where the best soil was. This was an old horse pasture, and our clay hard pan is about 3 feet down, right where your feet are. As we get down to the bottom of the hill though, that clay hard pan starts to kind of rise up. It's only about a foot down. So we planned accordingly for that, knowing that some things grow better in clay soils and some things can tolerate clay soils better. Quick companion planting. Here we got a persimmon tree breaking dormancy, and right underneath it, our comfrey is starting to wake up. Comfrey is every permaculture's buddy, best friend. This is a deep tap-rooted nutrient accumulator. That plant is going to put a really deep taproot down, pull up nutrients from the subsoil and deposit it into its leaves. What we then do is chop it, drop it, wood chip over, and we're building soil fertilization for this plant right next to it. So you'll probably see a lot of comfrey growing underneath most of our trees out here. That's one we spread and divide every year. Like I was saying about the clay soils, at the bottom of the hill we're growing things that can tolerate it. Things like blueberry and mayhaw. I was saying that mayhaws grow in the crappiest of crappy soils. Well, they're doing just fine here where we got a clay hard pan just a foot down. If anything, that deep taproot on that mayhaw is actually breaking up the clay hard pan and starting to allow these nutrient channels where when it rains we can get some good compost or good soil down into the soil. So this patty is just a good visual representation of a full guild. We have mayhaws as the tree species. Under it are blueberries, which don't mind a little bit of dappled shade during the year. It's hot here in South Carolina. Blueberries really don't mind getting a little bit of dappled shade. So they do well under these trees during the summer. Also here, we've got asparagus and mint as a ground cover. Here, try that. Try one. Try one? Go ahead. Go ahead, I'm gonna get y'all one, don't worry. Just eat it straight up. It's gonna be lots of water content in it. It's gonna be sweet. How's it taste? It's not bitter at all, right? It's filled with, yeah, it tastes like salad. Because I knew we had clay hard pan about a foot below us, I grew figs on our swale mounds. I kind of used those mounds to elevate the root system of those figs so that A, they wouldn't get waterlogged, and B, they'd kind of get away from that clay hard pan. So that's kind of why you see we got this row of figs growing on the mound. And then there's more of that Elaeagnus flowering just right downhill from it as a hedgerow, basically. At some point in time, all that hedgerow of nitrogen-fixing Elaeagnus is going to get cut all the way down to the ground. The main crop is the figs and the pawpaws growing on the downside. While I'm waiting for those trees to grow up and get mature and fruit, I have this crop of goumyberry providing food for me. So I'm growing in like 3 dimensions over space and time so that we've got something growing and harvesting all the time. And just in this small area, we can see we have pawpaw, goumyberry, fig, blueberry, mayhaw. We have an olive tree right here, and then of course the asparagus and the mint as ground covers. So in just this small area, we got all these food items all growing together in cooperation, not in competition. They're all doing just fine with each other. Everything's healthy. Once again, no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. Like I was talking about our spillway, all of our trenches, our swales have this common spillway here that comes down the hill. That water is what waters our vegetable garden. That water kind of moves around our vegetable garden and gets all the vegetables fed. Now, this is our fall garden. Things are going to flower, things are going to die. Come back in the spring when we've refreshed this. It's going to look totally different. We grow this vegetable garden using hugelkultur mounds. Hugelkultur is basically wood core with soil on top of it, and then we grow in that soil. So right over here you can kind of see some of this wood core I'm talking about. Okay, and you'll see we got wood core growing all around through here. And this was put here last year, and it's already starting to break up. And what this acts as, give it a squeeze. It acts as a sponge. Oh, yeah. The wood core absorbs water, and the root systems of the vegetables will reach for this wood core and grow into it. very moist wood. Yep. And this was all put here last year. So this is just 1 year of decomposition. Now, this year we'll refresh. We'll put more wood core down, compost over, and then grow in it again. And this is kind of what we do every year to, once again, build soil as we're going along. Because we've got this sponge-like wood, we don't have to water our vegetable garden as much. This is the water, you know, this wood will hold water for a good time, even through a droughty period. At the bottom of the hill here, we got our beehives far on the far side, if you've seen them. Also, of course, part of any full ecosystem. We lost one of our hives during the winter. That's okay. We're starting 2 more new ones next week, so we'll be up to 4 beehives. Last year, we harvested over 10 gallons of honey off of 3 beehives. If you want to walk around, you are free. If you don't have any other questions, you are free to walk around, check things out. It's thick and dense at some of the points that you didn't get to see. Here's one of the olive trees. This is a Arbequina olive.
So this can take the frost, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, we grow in Mediterranean environment.
Is this a eating or a olive pressing?
I think this is an eating one. This is an eating.
Don't you have to do something? I mean, don't you have to do them, like, soak them in brine?
You can, yes. My dad, we grew olives in California.